We are on the air, and we're on page 156 of our ABCs, ABCs of Christian Maturity. Looking at letter E under the Israel being a covenant nation. This is talking about, we're on letter I, actually. Letter I, Israel, for the ABCs of Christian Maturity. But then we're on section here of letter I, Israel being a covenant nation, and then we're on subpoint E, which is the Davidic Covenant. So, so we're looking here at 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16, and I'm going to try to keep from having to do that myself there. That's all right. That's all right. I'm feeling it too, bro. All right. So 2 Samuel chapter 7 verses 12 through 16. Here is the basis of our passages here. I'll quickly just read through this. It says, "And when the days, and when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. And I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall," let me just make sure we're on here. All right. "But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever." Does anybody want to guess who he's talking about here? Anybody want to guess who he's talking about? We're talking to, rather. David, right? He's talking to David. Talking to King David. And he's speaking of whom? I know these aren't questions on here, but who's he speaking of? This is a trick question, just to let you know. No. Well, yes and no. It depends on how you look at that. He's speaking of Solomon, David's son. However, he's also speaking of Jesus. Speaking of Solomon in a way, but Solomon will fulfill some of that, or some of that prophecy, but then Christ is going to fulfill the rest of that prophecy. So this is what we would call a double fulfillment prophecy, where Solomon fulfills it, but then Christ, being the son of David, fulfills that prophecy completely. And so as we look here, it says, "This covenant enlarges upon the provisions of the Abrahamic Covenant concerning the throne." Does anybody remember what the Palestinian covenant enlarges upon my goodness, how do I formulate that question? The Palestinian covenant enlarges upon what part of that covenant? What does the Palestinian covenant enlarge upon concerning the Abrahamic covenant? Anybody remember? What? The land. He's got it right there. See? Just a little heads up. If you turn to page 159, I think it is, in your book, see the chart? I had to draw it in mine because it wasn't there. So, so the chart tells you which covenant. So you have the heavenly seed, the earthly, then you have the Palestinian. This is the everlasting Abrahamic covenant. Then you have the Palestinian, which enlarges upon the land, the Davidic, which enlarges upon the throne, and the new, which enlarges upon the heart. Whereas, however, for the heavenly portion of the covenant is primarily there about the heart. So, anyways, there's your cheat sheet, so to speak. So we're looking here on page 156. It says, so the provisions. So here are the initial provisions. In verse number 16, it says, in this verse, the Lord made three promises to King David. First of all, he promised that his house would be established forever. that his house would be established forever. Then he promised that his kingdom would be established forever. And then he promised that his throne would be established forever. So this is the promises, the three promises that God gave to King David there concerning that, and this is the enlargement, or rather, this is enlarging upon the Abrahamic covenant concerning the throne, or the well establishment. Because basically, okay, we have God says to Abraham, go to this land. Go to this land that I'm going to give to you. Go out there and I'm going to show you the land. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. I'm kind of like skipping through the whole covenant. So I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to give you the chosen people. All of those things. And then he enlarges upon that covenant with Moses and the Palestinian covenant to Israel. He enlarges upon the land portion of that covenant. He says concerning the land, he says, this is the land that you're going to have. He says from here to there and so on. And now they go into the land and they begin to take over the land, and they do take over the land. Then we see that that they're going to establish their nation there in the land, the nation of Israel. Okay, and then as that nation is established, God further solidifies his covenant with Abraham by covenanting with David and saying, I am going to now not only just establish the nation, but I'm going to establish it in a kingdom. We're going to put a king on the throne. Now, of course, we had Saul and all that, and that was the decision of Israel, and God said, fine, you want a king? I'll give you a king. He gives him Saul. Saul messes up. He throws him off the throne. David comes along and he says, this is going to be the man that's going to be the king, and his kingdom and the kingdom of his kingdom, his house, his throne, it's going to be forever. And David, we know, was a man after God's own heart, but we find that this is a permanent covenant. In chapter 7, verse 16, as we've already looked at, it says that the covenant is forever. That's right. So we're going to look here at a few other passages here. Psalm 89, verses 3 and 4 says, I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn unto David my servant, thy seed will I establish forever. Right? Then he says, and build up thy throne to all generations. And then we're going to look over here at Psalm 89, verses 28 through 37. He says, my mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my law and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgression with a rod and their iniquity with stripes. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. He's not going to allow his faithfulness to fail. He goes on, he says, my covenant will I not break, nor alter. I gave you the word. My covenant will I not break, nor alter. All right. Nor alter the thing that is gone out of my lips. I have sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon and as a faithful witness in heaven. That Selah means pause and think about it. It says this is forever. Not temporary, but forever. So we have this covenant being permanent. It says, according to this psalm, will Israel's disobedience annul the covenant? No, absolutely not. Will not. So you can check the box. No. No. Now we're going to look here at Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 19 through 26. First, before we read it, I'll go ahead and ask the question, or read through here. It says, if God should break his covenant with David, there will no longer be day and night. That's pretty serious. Let's look and see what he says here. The word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah, saying, thus saith the Lord, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season, then may also my covenant be broken with David, my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne, with the Levites and the priests, my ministers, as the hosts of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, considerest thou not that this people have spoken, saying, the two families which the Lord hath chosen, he hath even cast them off. Thus they have despised my people, that they should be no more a nation before them. Thus saith the Lord, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant, so that I will not take any of the seed, or any of his seed, to be rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he says, for I will cause their captivity to return and have mercy on them. Now remember that Jeremiah wrote in the time that Israel was being taken captive. Okay, and he's saying, look, this isn't this captivity is not forever, and my covenant is forever. So he goes on. He says, when God gave a similar covenant to Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 1 through 9, which you can read on your own. I'm just going to kind of skip on down through there. It was conditional. The Lord did not promise that Solomon's seed would sit upon David's throne forever. This was because his lineage would eventually be cut off. Okay, we find that taking place. But it says, in studying the lineage of Christ, we see that Joseph's line comes through Solomon and the kings of Judah, but Mary's line comes from David, but not Solomon. There's a different child of David's that goes through, and we can see in let's see here, Luke chapter 3, which I didn't put it all on here, but I'll just quickly jump over there and look at it and try to give you the link there. So we have, this is Mary's line. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, that's Joseph, isn't it? What'd you say?
Verse 31.
Verse 31.
Which was the son of Melay, which was the son of Menon, which was the son of David, which was the son of Nathan, which was the son of David, which was the son of Joseph.
Yeah. So Nathan instead of Solomon. Yeah. Interesting. Yet we'll find that the prosecution, or the actual acting out of this covenant, takes place, and God does preserve the king of Israel on David's throne, from David's house, in David's kingdom. Okay, so according to Romans 1:3, right there, concerning his son Jesus Christ our Lord, which was of the seed of David, according according to the flesh. And that's from, now, either way you go, if you follow Joseph's line up through Solomon, or you follow Mary's line up through Nathan, you still come back to David. Either way you go. Of course, we recognize that Joseph was the father of Jesus, only, you know, the earthly father. He was not physically his father, though. He was, I would say, his adopted father, so to speak. So his stepfather, I guess you'd say, right? Because God the Father was his actual father. So we have, even if you followed Joseph's line, it would go through David. But we follow Mary's line, which is where the bloodline comes to Jesus through, and that is through David and Nathan there. So, anyways, we have that according to this passage, who is of the seed of David? Jesus is, right? Jesus Christ. So thus David's seed extends eternally. Right? When is Jesus' end? Never. He has no end. And so therefore, he is the eternal king after the seed of David. Forever. It's and he's also a priest after the order of Melchizedek, which is another thing altogether. But so David's kingdom, he says it has been interrupted. We're going to look at that. It says from David to the captivity, a total of 20 kings reigned in unbroken succession from the throne of David in Jerusalem. Okay, Zedekiah was removed from the throne of David by the Babylonians in 586 BC, as we can look there concerning that in Jeremiah chapter 52, which you can look at on your own, that he was taken from the throne. And yeah, it was not a good deal there, really. Actually, I'll go ahead and read it. It says, and the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. So they were cut off. By the way, this was part of the fulfillment of that prophecy to Solomon, that basically Solomon messed up, and so this is where he was cut off. And then so his sons were killed right in front of his eyes, and that was the last thing he saw, because the next thing that happens is he then put out the eyes of Zedekiah. And the king of Babylon bound him in chains and carried him to Babylon and put him in prison till the day of his death. Death sentence, or life sentence, rather, until the day of his death. Last thing he got to see was his own sons killed. So there's a whole lot more involved in that, too. You can read the rest of the story there in Jeremiah, as well as, I believe, 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles. So the Babylonian captivity ushered in what Luke chapter 21 verse 24 calls the time of the Gentiles, right? Times of the Gentiles. So it says they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now, part of this verse is giving a prophecy of what's going to happen in the future, but this times of the Gentiles began back in that time, basically when Israel was first cut off. Okay, now they were cut off, then they were brought back, and they were given the opportunity now to turn to him when Christ came, when the Messiah came. They had the opportunity to turn to him. When they rejected him, that cutting off was not restored. They weren't completely restored at that point. But we're gonna look at that a little bit here. It says, following the Maccabean revolt, which happened between the testaments, okay, between after the captivity and all of that 400 years of silence. We do have historical record of that time, accurate or not, we don't know for sure, but we do know that the Maccabeans were a Levitical the family of the Levites, and it says that so the Jews since or from that time until about 63 BC there that they ruled themselves, but the Maccabees were Levites, not of the royal tribe of Judah. It was kind of more of there was a revolt, and they were able to make things work for a while. Then we find that Rome came in and said, well, it's our deal now. So then we did kind of have somewhat of a, I don't know, it was kind of a para rule, like Rome was in charge, but then we had Israeli people put in charge of them, or even in some cases like Herod was Jew, and he was kind of a mix of Jew and Gentile, and but he was put in charge because of his knowledge and understanding of the Jews and all that. That didn't work out all that well, even in his successors. In fact, it wasn't 70 years later, well, 70 years after Christ was born, that they cut off the city completely and destroyed it. So and scattered them all over the place. In fact, they were kicked out of Rome and kicked out of pretty much everywhere, and they just had to run. And so wherever they could hide is where they would go. But in 1948, Israel came back. And since then, though, Israel has been an independent, although they've been an independent sovereign nation, none of the leaders have been of the tribe of Judah so far. None of them. In fact, what's interesting, that's very interesting, actually. So Ben Gurion was their first prime minister. Then we have Meir, and then Begin, and then Rabin, Shamir, Netanyahu, Omert, and then now we're back to Netanyahu again. Those were the. Now, what does yours say there? Does it have Netanyahu again on there, or just Netanyahu, Omert, etc.? Okay. All right. So yeah. So we're back to Netanyahu again now. Does anybody know what tribe Netanyahu's from? No. I don't remember exactly, but I don't know. I don't remember. I knew at one point, but I don't remember which tribe it is now. But none of them are from the tribe of Judah at this point. So it will happen, though, someday, as according to Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 through 7, David's throne will not be occupied again until the Prince of Peace returns. So I'm going to read these passages real quick here that he references, okay? So Isaiah 9, 6, and 7 says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forevermore." This was actually in my Bible reading today. "The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 5 and 6 says, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name whereby he shall be called, the Lord our righteousness." Jeremiah 33, verses 14 through 17. I want to make sure that I don't go too far here. Yeah, Hosea is the last one there. Okay, so it says, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. In those days shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name wherewith she shall be called." This is talking about Jerusalem. "The Lord our righteousness. For thus saith the Lord, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. Hosea chapter 3 verses 4 and 5 says, for the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without a teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Does anybody know when this is going to happen? Revelation chapter 19. Jesus comes back and he sits on the throne. This is what we call the millennial kingdom, or the I was looking over here, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Right. This is when he comes, returns, sets foot on the Mount of Olives, walks in. Just what's interesting is, like, all the prophecy, and I've got a lot of like passages like flying through right now, but all the prophecy of him coming, some of it was fulfilled in his first coming, and some of it will be fulfilled in his second coming. We have the prophecy of his first coming, suffering and so forth. But we have still, though, some of the things that pertain to the second coming. He fulfills in the first coming, and then he'll fulfill again in the second coming. In the first coming, we have him coming in. What does it say? That your king comes to you how, in what way, in what manner, and on what beast? Yeah, on a donkey's back, right? A young one, just coming on in, and he did. The triumphal entry there, and they all sang Hosanna and or cried Hosanna, and he came right on in. And then we have, when he comes down on the Mount of Olives, they come to him. They come running to him because they were just sieged about, and their city was captivated for a long time, and some of them are starving to death and everything, and they see Jesus come. And he sets foot on the Mount of Olives, and all the enemies around are destroyed. And the Mount of Olives busts open, half of the mountain to the north and half the mountain to the south. And that what's awesome about that is, if you look at the geography, the Mount of Olives and the Eastern Gate, and the Mount of Olives is just east of the city, just east of the Temple Mount, and people have for many, many years buried their dead. And now, in fact, on the Mount of Olives, it's so used for burial that people are buried standing up instead of laying down, so that they have more space to bury people. And basically the whole mountainside is a graveyard. And in some cases, that's in one way, that's a major problem, because they say, well, the Messiah can't, like the Muslims say, the Messiah cannot pass this way to come into, Israel's Messiah won't ever be able to come into the temple through the Eastern Gate, as was prophesied, because we got dead bodies in the ground, and he can't walk over graves because it'd make him unclean. Well, he fixes that problem, because when he lands on the Mount of Olives, all that goes. And so it just opens it wide up. Doesn't matter what graves they've got going on there, unless they put them, 30, 40 feet down. Doubt it. He's just going to move them aside. Pretty cool, huh? How prophecy just works no matter who tries to mess it up. And so he's going to walk right on in, and he's going to sit down on the throne of David. And he's going to be the king forever. Now, of course, we recognize that after that 1,000 years, the heaven and the earth passes away. There's a new heaven and a new earth. There's still Jerusalem, and he rules from there. Still from the throne of David forever. So let's see here. We just looked at those passages. So letter D here says the next ruler to sit on the throne, on David's throne, and I already gave you the answer to that, is who? Jesus. Luke chapter 1, verses 31, 33. Behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus. He shall be great. He shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father David, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. Then we see, according to these two passages that we're about to read, Jesus Christ is presently seated in his Father's throne. Yes. Revelation chapter 3, verse 21, it says, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 12 says, but this man, talking about Jesus, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever. This is, by the way, this is the passage that you go to see that Jesus offered one sacrifice for sins forever, right before the throne of God. It says, then he did what? He sat down on the right hand of God. So he sat there at the throne of God. So, so we have this, and I'm tempted to keep on. I think I might go ahead and deal with the new covenant because it's a short portion here. Then we'll pick up under the blinded nation next week. So Jeremiah chapter 31. Any questions or comments there on the Davidic Covenant? Thoughts, questions, comments, anything on that? All right, well, we'll go ahead and continue on. We'll talk about the new covenant here quickly. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31 through 34. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more any man his neighbor, and or every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. So he gives us some promises of the new covenant. Now, this particular covenant enlarges upon the provisions of the Abrahamic covenant concerning the heart. Okay, and so now he's going to give us promises here concerning the new covenant. So the first one, in verse number 33, we find that God's law will be written on their hearts. It's no longer a matter of opening the book and saying this. Now, he doesn't do away with the law, right? He says he puts the law on their hearts, okay? Then we have that all Israel is going to know God, according to verse 34. God will forgive Israel's iniquity and remember their sin no more, right? Letter D, God will give Israel one heart and one way. Oh, I guess I didn't read the verse. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God, and I will give them one heart and one way, that they may fear me forever, for the good of them and of their children after them. Then Ezekiel 11:19, and I will give them one heart, and I will put a new spirit within them, or within you. And I will take the stony heart out of their flesh, and will give them a heart of flesh. Now, I want to also say that this new covenant is fulfilled in Christianity today. However, it is completely fulfilled when God does it with Israel during the kingdom age. Okay, so that's another double fulfillment prophecy concerning the new covenant. The new covenant is what we experience as Christians today. However, its purpose is for Israel, and he will fulfill it completely with them in the kingdom age, in that 1,000 years when Jesus rules from the throne there. And actually not just during that time, but that's when it begins and goes on forever. It's in the day of the Lord. So that I did do Ezekiel there, 11:19, but didn't do the other one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the permanency of the new covenant. Ezekiel 37, verse 26 and 27. He says, moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an... What? There's no blanks? Well, mine has a blank. It's all capitalized. All right, well, there you go. Everlasting. Mine had a blank. I will make, it shall be an everlasting covenant with them. Then I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. It's interesting he didn't put Revelation. The new heaven and the new earth here. This is when this is completely fulfilled. This particular new covenant. Okay, it's an everlasting covenant, and it is completely fulfilled when we look at yeah, I'm having a hard time finding it. What's that?
And I heard a great voice out of heaven.
There it is. Where's that at? Revelation
21 verse 3.
21 verse 3. Yeah. See? There we go. Let me start at verse 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and I will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. This is the final fulfillment of this prophecy that was written. And what's interesting is God gave this or showed this to John AD 95 roundabout. We see it today, and then we'll actually see it come to pass at least 1,007 years from now, maybe longer. But it'll come to pass after the end of the kingdom and after that final judgment. It'll definitely be longer than 1,007 years, but that will come to pass. But we have right here in Ezekiel, which was written, I would say, 600 years or so before, or BC, and then we have 95. So roughly 700 years between the two writings, and we have agreement. And the one, of course, we recognize that God wrote all of his word, and so it's easy to have agreement when you're writing. Of course, he used men, but he wrote it there, gave it through his spirit, through these men. But we have the perfect fulfillment of that everlasting covenant right there when God dwells with men in the New Jerusalem. So he says it is based upon the I will of the Lord alone, not the five, or note the five I wills in Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 31 through 34. He says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand and brought to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law in their inward parts. I will write in their hearts and will be their God. I'll write it in their hearts and be their God. And they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them even unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. So we have this covenant based upon these things, and this being the permanent covenant. And then again, Revelation chapter 21, verse 3, there it's fulfilled completely. So the payment for the new covenant, how did this take place? Since the new covenant involves a spiritual regeneration of Israel, it must provide for the miracle of the individual new birth by grace through faith in Christ. This can only be accomplished through the blood of Christ, which has been shed. So this the payment for this covenant, as we have the what happened for the Abrahamic covenant? What did he do when he brought that deep darkness and that sleep upon Abraham? What did God pass between what? The parts of what?
The entrance.
Broken animals, cut up animals, split. The animals were split in half. They were broken, and the blood was shed. Just as we commemorate the Lord when we partake of the Lord's Supper, we have the broken body and the shed blood being symbolized in the juice there and the bread. And so that same covenant, or the covenant's made that same way. We commemorate the covenant and how he paid for that covenant when his body was broken and his blood was shed, just the same as those animals that were broken and the blood was shed for the covenant, for the Abrahamic covenant. And so he gives us that. He says, and he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is the blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. So we have that symbol there that he gives us, that picture, that type that he shows us in the Lord's Supper. But rather, we recognize that the symbol of those things represents the very body of Christ that was broken for our sins, and the very blood of Christ that was shed for our sins. And so that was the payment for the covenant. And along with that payment comes the opportunity for each individual to turn to God from sin, to trust in him and his work on Calvary, so that we might have the law of God written in our hearts, so that we might know the Lord, so that we might have forgiveness of sins and have everlasting life. And we today are a picture of the fulfillment of that covenant with Israel later on in the kingdom age. Isn't that interesting? Any questions, thoughts, comments on any of those things?